I am Chinese.
I feel like there's a difference between being racially Chinese and culturally Chinese. So like, I feel like it's kind of a loaded term.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I would say my ethnicity is Chinese, but I wouldn't say my personality would be 100% lean towards being someone who's very Chinese.
I am American. No idea.
Well, like I said, I'm like 50% Chinese, 50% American. So, well, since I studied there for a couple of years, I feel like I was kind of influenced by the culture. But still, I was born Chinese and raised up here, so I believe I'm pretty neutral.
Since Americans like don't really have as much of a general race because it's so diverse, like anyone could be American. Like I feel like an American person would identify me as American because it doesn't really have color, you know.
I'm standing on this line because I am born and raised in China. I am influenced by the American culture since like I'm here, but I wouldn't identify as an American.
I like hot water more than cold water.
I think it's very hard to drink hot water. Like I like to drink a lot of water fast, and it's hard to drink hot water fast.
Yeah, it's just like biologically different.
Yeah.
I think hot water is fine. Like, I personally still like cold water, but it's like hot tea. I'll drink that on like a cold day. So I'm like here.
But it burns me.
I actually enjoy the kind of feeling that it burns me a little bit. I even drink like hot water like in summer. I know it's strange, but I do it because like cold water just makes me hot. Like it's bad for my throat in a way. I don't know. So just yeah, I'm in for hot water.
I am a minority.
I feel like I just live in China, and all around me is like Chinese, so I don't feel like I'm a minority.
Wait, can I change my answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in America I'm a minority because I'm Asian, right? But in China, I wouldn't consider myself a minority, but I'm definitely part of like that. I guess like a foreigner, and they don't really see me as someone who's really Chinese. Cause it's like, well, why don't you speak Chinese fluently? Like you look Chinese, but why don't you speak it? And I'm like, oh, I grew up outside the country, and they're like, it's just like they always have a really very mixed reaction towards me.
I think I would consider myself a minority growing up in the U.S. Most of the time I would surround myself with other Asian Americans, but just in general, once I step out of that bubble, it's not like, I'm not going to find as many people who look like me or do the same things, daily things that I do.
I can tell the difference between an ABC and someone who is Chinese.
So I think I can like tell the difference from the way they speaking, they use English, like the words and sentence, something like that.
I think the way people dress is also very telling, but I think that like culturally, like being a teenager, like there are overlaps with like the way people dress in America and China. So I don't think it's like you can look at the way people dress and just know. I think humor is another one that's really telling about if someone's like Chinese or American Chinese.
All the Americans, all the ABCs, they like to go to hip hop clubs. My Chinese friends all like to go to EDM clubs. So there's that.
There are inherent differences between people who are ABC and people who are Chinese.
I would disagree because I feel like what really shapes you as a person is actually the way that you were raised and like the environment you were in. So I wouldn't say there is that much of a like inherent difference.
I think there are differences as the tradition people uphold, especially like the way you're raised, if you're raised in America versus if you're raised in China. There are parts that like are similar. There are parts that are similar, right? But there's also differences because there are parts when you like live in America and you grow up there, you'll miss some things if you grow up in China.
You know, I disagree. I don't think it's very hard to like switch between like acting ABC like and acting Chinese like. Like I act completely different when I'm with my Chinese friends, like Chinese friends, and my ABC friends. So like, I think it's very easy to turn that switch and like act like someone else.
I kind of disagree with that because I feel like that's just like the statement of someone who is both ABC and Chinese. But when you're like truly like a Chinese person, you can't really just like go to America and like everyone thinks you're super American. You know, that's not really how it works. Like I feel like maybe you're just on like the neutral side of those two identities, but when you're not on the neutral side, it's like for me, like I don't really speak fluent Chinese, so I don't really like understand some like Chinese jokes. So I can't just like switch on and suddenly be Chinese, you know?
I think that's true.
I think like the fact that you point out that you have to switch your personality shows that there's differences between the two.
I would choose my family's interests over pursuing my own.
Well, I mean, my family's interests kind of align with mine, and you know, my parents, they really contribute a lot to my education and everything. They raised me up, so I feel like I kind of have to somehow, you know, align my interests with my family's.
My parents have sacrificed a lot for me to give me the opportunities that I have today. So I don't see why that can't be, like, for me at least, that can't be something that's negotiable or something that I would, I think it's something that I would really focus on in my life when I do have to make the choice between the two, because I think also in Chinese culture, it's not, a lot of it has to do with filial piety, and it's not just about you, it's about, like, you have to be considerate of how your family feels as well, to a certain extent.
I was thinking about if our interests contradict, I would just consider this on the different situations. But after talking about like your parents invest so much, and I just think I wouldn't be so like defensive on my own stand.
Well, I think it's like it's good to listen to your parents and what they like want you to do, because like they have way more experience than you. But if you like really think about something and you really want to do it, and your parents don't want you to, like, I don't think it matters, because just do what you want. Like your parents, like you're not obligated to give them anything, I guess. Like just do what you want in your own life. Live your own life.
I feel like there's a difference between respecting your parents and respecting everything they have to say. Because I respect my parents a lot as people. My dad immigrated to the US when he was really young, and he worked his way to provide a future for me. So I respect him as a person, and I would never want to hurt him. I want to do the best for myself for my own sake, not for their sake. But like sometimes if my parents have an opinion about something, I'm not going to just always respect it, because I'm an adult and I have to like pave my own way as well.
You need to be born in China to be Chinese.
Well, because in my opinion, those who were born in the US, who were of the Chinese ethnicity, they're still Chinese. So you don't have to be born in China to be Chinese.
You know, like you'd be born in America and then move back to China when you're like 1 or 2, and those 2 years don't affect you at all. So
To consider the issue of if you are Chinese doesn't really have to do with where you are born, because so like if I mean, you can if you want to, of course, but if let's say we take like any person of color and then they were born in China, does that mean that they are Chinese? I think if that person really develops their Chinese language skills and is really interested in the culture, learns the history, learns well, it's very complicated. If they try to invest themselves in that, you can say, like, I would say, like, that, I wouldn't say that. I would say that if you try to learn the language, the history, the culture, I think that would make you Chinese, not the place that you are born in. Because I cannot control where I was born, or where I was, like, no, I don't, like, I couldn't control that. But I can control how much of my identity that I want to be in touch with.
There's a slight difference between how you identify yourself and how others identify your nationality.
Chinese culture and American culture are really different in the sense that American culture is more accessible. So you can grow up in China, like going to international schools and completely adapt to the American culture. Like, for example, me, that's like what happened in my life. But the Chinese culture, I feel like, is really exclusive and unique to the geography of China. Like, you can't really be born in America, grow up there, and you're Chinese. But it is possible to, like, grow up in China, but be American. And I think that's something that's really special about Chinese culture. And the reason why I partially agree with this is because it's quite, like, geographically and culturally exclusive to actually have this Chinese identity.
So what if you were born in China and then you left, never came back, and then like learned, taken up like a completely different culture, don't speak Chinese, don't know anything, don't know any history, don't follow up with the culture, have nothing to do with your roots, but you were still born in China, would that make you Chinese?
Well, I feel like that's a very, very small percentage of people. Like, I feel like none of us know anyone like
No,
that.
yeah, of course,
You know what I
of
mean?
course. But just like hypothetically, if that was the case, like, would that be, you know?
It would still be ethnically Chinese because they do look Chinese and they're born there. So that doesn't mean their nationality has to be Chinese.
Yeah.
If they don't want to like learn about Chinese culture, that's up to them. That's their own personal choice.
I've never faced discrimination based on my ethnicity.
I feel like I'm discriminated because like although I'm like live in China, it's not really racism towards Chinese, but I feel like during the COVID, I think the whole Chinese ethnicity is kind of discriminated.
I only been to America twice, and even during the travel time, I can feel the discrimination, especially in the North States, which, yeah, probably because I never been to South. Yeah, and it was on the train, and there are 2 floors, and we go to the up ones. There's just some white guys saying that you should go down. This is not your place, which is really, upsetting or something. Yeah.
I think for me, I didn't think deep into the concept of discrimination before I came to NYU Shanghai, and I'm still learning this. So I think maybe if I learn more, I would know some situation is discrimination.
Well, I grew up in America, and like I don't feel like I've been truly discriminated against by anybody in America because, like, I think there's a difference between like being curious about someone's culture and like actually being racist against them. So like when an American like asks me something like that, a lot of people I think would say it is like more racist. Like I don't think it's actually like racism. It's just like curiosity. And if you just answer their questions, like I don't think there's any actual like discrimination that you're facing.
I feel like there's also like a very big difference between outward racism and internal racism because I grew up in Shanghai, but I lived in California for 6 months. And when I moved there, everyone kind of like took an interest into me because they're like, oh, like, why aren't you like the other fobs, you know? Like, why are you from China but you speak like fluent English? And I feel like that, like, it sounds like it's kind of a compliment, but it's really like internal racism. Yeah, it's like a microaggression.
Wait, so why would you say that's like internally racist then? I think it's just like they're just genuinely curious. They're not
Well, I
feeling
think
any sense of hatred against you because you're from China.
that's kind of like saying, oh, like, if you're from America, like, why do you have brown skin? Don't you think that's internal racism? That's like them asking me, if you're from China, why do you speak fluent English?
So I agree with both sides, but to a certain degree, like I understand where you're coming from, but for those questions, I think it would be, like for genuine, like I do think that some people are genuinely curious and they don't word their questions correctly, so then it comes off as racism or kind of aggressive towards us, and I understand that. So like if somebody says something like, well, like, you know, like like, I don't know, what, like let's say for food, right, why do you eat that, what is that, you know, maybe they come off kind of rude, disrespectful, but that's just like, I understand from that side, but as for microaggressions, you know,
We were talking about like microaggression, like when you're young, like little kids, like my instance, like they're not being racist, they just genuinely just don't know, you know. But I think as you get older and like in high school, you're in college and people ask you that, I don't think they have good intentions behind it anymore.
yeah.
I think,
Sorry.
I think one of the problems with microaggressions is it kind of comes off as a compliment, and it's almost like it's supposed to make you feel better about yourself. Like, oh, like you're so cool. You're like, your English is perfect. How are you from China? Like, oh, you're so pretty for an Asian. That's a microaggression. That's like internal racism. But you don't realize it because it's kind of flattering sometimes. And I think it's different if someone's like, oh, like you're from China, cool. Like, where in China are you from? Versus, that's curiosity. Versus, if you're from China, why aren't you acting like the rest of the fobs that are from China? That is internal racism.
There are ways to implement change in my community, and there are resources to support change.
The current community is changing a lot. I feel like Asian Americans in the past really raised their voices about this kind of stuff, but currently, like, you know, there have been rallies and rallies all over schools in the U.S. right now. I see a lot of resources posted by a lot of Asian American accounts. We can share that later. With that either like organizations that you can donate to, or organizations that you can donate to, books to read to educate yourself on Asian American history, and there's so many more. I can't even like list them all, but yeah, there are a lot of resources out there. I think it's just an issue of how to get that out to the wider population. That's not just the people who are immediately affected by the situation that's going on.
Some of my white friends, they posted a lot during the BLM movement, while during this, you know, during this period of time, I don't see any of them posting things, which makes me kind of upset.
Yeah.
There's a lot of individuals who really like Asian culture, but they are able to pick and choose of what they like of Asian culture. They don't have to take up all like the disrespect people have for Asians or the racism against it. They can pick and choose what they want, and they can give it up anytime they would like. And these people that I see, I don't see them ever posting it. I don't see them even like talking about it with other people.
I actually feel quite different, probably because the social media I'm using is not just Instagram, but more likely to be just Chinese social media, which we don't actually have the VPN to go outside. So in my community where I grow up is totally surrounded by Chinese, and many of them haven't even gone abroad before. Is that the situation right now is that even if I have saw so many posts about Asian racism problem, in that circle I actually didn't see anything. I think just a minority of people are talking it on like Weibo or something that is fully Chinese. They're more care about something on I think right now it's Xinjiang.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the Asian hate thing. If they don't even aware of such issue, how can we change it?
I agree with Christine because I'm mostly on like Chinese Weibo, and a really small percentage of people are talking about like the Asian hate that's going on in the States. just like a few of them, they're like going through a hard time just by posting things, like posting facts, and like Chinese are actually, some of them are like giving them a hard time for like, why do you want to care about this? It's not our problem. Like they're not Chinese. Which I'm really upset to see those things. I feel like they deserve much more attention, like in like Chinese internet and stuff.
The reason I'm disagreeing quite strongly with this statement is because you guys are right, there's a lot of chat, right? There's a lot on social media, people are talking about it, there's infographics, but what tangible change has occurred? Like every day we still wake up and Asians are getting like drop kicked on the street for no reason. But I feel like this Stop Asian Hate thing, it's merely a lot of like talk, but like what tangible change has occurred to combat the actual issue?